Hey, what is going on, team? And welcome back to another episode of the Ask Maddie Show. We do the show every single Wednesday. We take your guys' questions from all over a variety of social media platforms, and we pick some of the best ones and discuss them here on the show today. We're going to be talking about XLM and a project that runs on the Stellar network as well, talking about maybe a couple tax concepts here, Zcash, Bitcoin, and then we're going to be talking about some of the best ROI out there. But before we get into that, we come from CryptoCharge.com. This is a super comprehensive platform. I've been forming for the last 4 years. I've been doing this full time for the last 4 years, so it's definitely one of the more polished programs out there compared to a lot of the other part-time analysts out there. No shade to them, but it is a big difference when you do this out 100% full time. We go live Monday through Friday. My business partner Dan goes live on Tuesdays, covering the macro. I cover the charts every other day, pretty much. We have a lot of resources, including our learning center and the consistent investor strategy, hand-selected news. We have our written analysis. So if you guys don't have time to catch up, we give you guys the absolute essence of everything that was discussed in that episode. We've also got our coin library where you guys can see entries, exits. That analysis is updated every 4 to 6 weeks, just depending on what's happening in the market. We'll be getting a refresh here soon. And then we get also access to our Discord community where you guys can ask questions. When the markets are showing their hand, we will do leverage trade ideas and a lot of other opportunity in there. With code YouTube, you guys 30 days free plus 50% off any membership. For the monthly, it's $49 for the month or $4.99 for the year. So you save even a little bit more money with that annual. So check it out. At least take the 30 days with code YouTube and see if it's a good fit for you. So let's get into some of the questions you guys have out here today. So we did an episode yesterday, on Monday, that was pretty heavily focused on XLM and XRP, but a lot of talk about XLM. So I'd encourage you guys to go watch that as well if you guys are interested in XLM content. But the first question is from 180 Adem. Or Ahmed, XLM holder here, when $5 though. So let's go ahead and take a look at the chart here. And we took a look at the chart yesterday, but we did more of a comparison of XRP versus XLM and talking about what that kind of potential ROI looks like. So let's take a look at this together here. So we are here on the aggregated chart. There is a fair amount of price history here, right? We come all the way back here to 2015. These are the projects that, especially when there's good, fundamental development, good partnership development, seeing those chains not be, dead chains. Those are the charts that, in fact, I put a little bit more weight on as far as kind of like conviction in some of these TPs because you have, so much price history that has been involved, a lot of listings and institutions also like to trade assets that have a lot of price history like this. So for XLM here, we came almost in for like a double top back here when we look at the previous tops, right? You guys can see that we almost swept that high from 2017 over here in 2021. So basically a double top with those recent rallies that we've had in here. So both the November high from 2024 and then the recent high here in July of this year ended up also failing to really break heavily up into the previous highs there and fully sweep those out. Now, one of the things that we are seeing here on the XLM chart is a good long-term trend. H-bar also shows a similar structural strength here, and we're going to get to that later in the show. But XLM above like this, 19-cent area is still a very strong uptrend. In fact, I would go as far to say is that really anything above 13 or 14 cents for XLM is still, constitutes a long-term uptrend and a higher low. You'd have the low there, you'd have this higher low, and that could still be the higher low there. But if we can maintain this here towards 20 cents, that suggests more short-term bullishness that could ensue here. So we are still building what I believe to be a just block of higher lows in here. This is very natural. This is kind of what we've been seeing on Chainlink. Saw a very similar story where you kind of had that long accumulation-based breakout. You just are spilling that new block in there. It's a very normal, healthy thing for a price to do. So those are some of the immediate parameters. I do think it's an overall good price right now, a good consideration for DCA. Swing high, swing low off of the more recent crashing here from 21 through 23. We get $1.20, $1.95, and then $3 or so as that full extension towards the 4.236. The ADA extension here supports closer to that $5 mark, actually closer to a $6 mark here, which puts us closer to like that 582 mark. If we bring in our other fib here, which again, this is considered like a Fibonacci cluster where you can look at two different ranges. It can get a little messy, but let's go and bring that bit one more time. It can get a little messy, but you guys can always delete, remove, and adjust. But what we're looking for is overlap, and you want to see if there's any figures that have overlap when those extensions are close together. So you guys can see like the 240 to 260 region, the 311 to 330 region, and then you get that 580 up there. So you only get that $5 mark once, and that's off of the 21 high and 22 low. So it is possible. The way I always look at it though is I use those as more of long-term targets. So even with XRP, right, I look at the 8 extension, look at the 13s. Those can be good long-term targets, but I want to be able to manage and mitigate risk based on the more immediate extensions produced 4.236 and below. So that's what I'd be considering there. Of course, if you pull up CoinMarketCap, and we're going to get to this in a second here, you pull up XLM and you guys can look at the market cap. It's only an $8.3 billion market cap, which is not that big, right? But when you multiply, the price times the circulating supply of $5, you want to make sure that that number is a relatively realistic number. Always use this as your starting base, guys, okay? So that's kind of my my overall analysis there with XLM. Last thing we'll go ahead and do is just measure out that ROI really quick. And we'll go from this swing high, we'll go from current market, and we'll go to that 580 mark or so, which I know is beyond the initial question. And that'd be close to like a 21x from current market. Now, the only thing I'll say about that is I think there's other assets that we've looked at that have a lot of, good long-term strength here, that to a, let's say 2.618 or 3.618 offer a similar reward or better, that doesn't require us to go to extensions beyond that. So just things to consider there. Let's move on to the next question from Brooke2712. Can you all discuss SHX? They are listed on Uphold now. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and take a look here at SHX again on CoinMarketCap. Again, this is where you guys should be taking a look at all of your initial research points before you're getting involved with stuff. So when we look at SHX here, market cap is very small, 67 million. This is what I consider a relatively small cap. Casper and API3 also share a relatively similar market cap right now. One thing that I was noticing here, and I kind of tried to dig on it a little bit more, and they don't offer like a granular tokenomics breakdown in their white paper. I actually flipped through the whole thing this morning looking for it. But the total supply here is 100 billion, and max supply is basically 100 billion. So that's not an inflationary concept here. What the big discrepancy I'm noticing is circulating supply is only, almost 6 billion right now. So it's a very small amount of supply that's online. Now, the way that these tokens do come online, from what I was reading, is essentially like multiple locked escrow accounts through, the Stronghold Treasury and ecosystem growth accounts. And those get unlocked on like a consistent schedule. But any tokens that are not used during that escrow period get automatically relocked back up. So they're not necessarily going to Series A investors or seed investors. Most of those rewards are out. It's going to be mostly like a continuously unlock of this escrow to be able to participate in ecosystem growth. So they are focused on obviously merchant payments. One of the biggest things that stood out to me just kind of flipping through it here was the ability to do like cash advance loans through DeFi protocols, which I do think is exciting. They talk about offering SHX rewards to merchants for payments. So they're trying to create, like a comprehensive SaaS platform, offer those DeFi loans for cash advances and a variety of other products. And again, this is primarily on the Stellar network. It is now on Ethereum as well, but this is issued on the Stellar network. So just remember, guys, that this is not a layer 1. This is essentially a layer 2. So let's go ahead and take a look here at the chart here for SHX. If you guys are interested in a big breakdown for SHX, and if you guys are in the comments, let me know. Maybe we'll go ahead and take a look at that on a future episode. Let's take a look here at the SHX chart here. So we have price history that goes back here to 2022. Again, just bad market timing. A lot of stuff will just have bad market timing, and you'll see crazy, depreciation out the gate here. Obviously, since then, you've had new highs that have been set, a good series of higher highs and higher lows that have been set here. One of the things that we'll go ahead and take a look at that maybe bothers me a little bit here on the chart as far as imbalances go, kind of like this 0.01 region here should have been back tested. It wasn't. Not that big of a deal considering this was, fairly amount of like illiquid price action here. You guys can see there's a lot of just like weird candles in here that, don't really suggest a lot of like high liquidity. But when we look at the more recent price action, and I guess we're going to be using essentially, the launch price here from 2022, there's a little bit of support before the breakdown. We see that behavior here a little bit with this flag structure in here, kind of pulling back into it, and we see multiple tests here through 2024. So we were kind of able to regain some of the momentum that was built here in 2022 on launch. Since then, though, it's been a relatively clean and consistent uptrend overall, right? And I always tell people when they're trying to figure out charting into the trend, right? Ask if it's your 5-year-old niece or nephew, which way the chart is going left to right. Don't overcomplicate it. It's going up, right? We're looking for a series of higher highs and higher lows. And we can see that there's kind of like an upward portion of this channel as well. It's not super clean overall, but this is a good uptrend as a whole. Now let's go ahead and break this away here, and let's go ahead and bring in a couple other levels. This level in here matters. And then this is going to be our other level that matters. So this is going to be kind of the support band that you're going to be watching to be maintained here, because this was a nice breakout here in January of this year, pullback, floor, support, broke higher, came down, same sensitivity there. So anything above 0.007 here is good long-term uptrend here for SHX. You do, again, have that consistent, uptrend here from based on what I'm seeing. There's no crazy unlock schedule where there's a bunch of holders that are going to get a bunch of coins that can potentially be dumped on market. Fibonacci wise here though, let's go from this first crashing structure. We got out to a 2.618 already, and you got pretty close here in January of this year to reaching out to that 1.618. Obviously exceeded it here. You had a little pit stop here in July of 25 and then moved higher there. So you could still use upwards of 4.6 to 5.4 cents as those areas of interest. And also remember this kind of price action here when you're looking at things like Casper, right? SHX technically got down to, for just using kind of the actual lows in here, 0.0004, 3 zeros and a 4, and now we're trading at 1.1. It's possible for recovery to happen with small caps, and it's still a very small cap. Market cap must have just been like, I don't know, well under 5 million at this point down there. But you could be looking upwards of 5 cents as that next more immediate area of interest, which sets you up for maybe like a 3 to 4x. We can of course also use the more recent crashing structures in here. You can use this one in here as well. And that suggests almost 6 to 6.8. And then the last fib range you can use in here, it offers the more immediate. And again, this is a little bit more of like a risky range to use, considering it's just recently been set as the low in there. But if that is the low that's maintained, be looking at upwards, the upper bounds of extension closer to like the 8, 11, and 12 cent mark, which from current market would be, again, 350 to TP1, 600 to TP2, and almost a 10x to TP3 or 4. So overall, good risk to reward. We've talked about the areas that need to be maintained here. I think they offer a decent product, although I haven't done deep research, of course, not financial advice. But that's kind of like how I would do a basic analysis if I was just kind of getting a top down on what's to be available here. Let's move on to our next question from Ethan Fretchett 2137. Are there any cryptos you're going to sell at a loss, or are you going to round trip? For example, Algo is below our DCA zone. Are you going to keep your position, keep stacking, or take some off the tables? Good question. So there's a few things to consider here, and we are actually, believe it or not, having a tax professional come on our Crypto Charge live show today. We might bring him on YouTube here in the near future, but CEO from Count on Sheep is going to be coming on today talking really, really in depth about tax questions, and that will be available for you guys to view later. So even if you're watching this video later on, you guys can join with a 30-day free trial and go watch that tax interview that we're going to be doing today. I know it's going to provide a lot of value, but for those of you guys who don't know, tax loss harvesting allows, and within crypto, you're allowed to sell and buy back right away. There isn't a wash sale rule like there is in the stock market. So you have the ability to sell and buy right back, and you can basically book that loss and use it against to offset any gains. So especially in this situation here where I've realized a pretty meaningful amount of capital for Zcash, one of the things that I could do is look at my portfolio and see what's in the red and see if I could offset that profit with that loss, right? At least for this year. Now, of course, in the future, I'll have to still pay taxes on, whatever gains are made from that newly bought asset that I buy in the future, but you can offset it there. Now, if you guys don't have a bunch of gains to offset, right, and you are looking at everything and you haven't taken any profits this year, tax loss harvesting will actually potentially work against you, because if you don't have anything to offset, you'll only be able to carry, I think, $3,500 over per year to be able to deduct against your taxes. So don't go more than $3,500. The other big thing to consider is your capital gains clock. So two types of capital gains, right? Short-term and long-term. You hold it for less than a year, you pay more. You hold it for more than a year, you pay less. Of course, that'll also, the percentage you pay will be based on your personal tax bracket. Whether you're married, a variety of different things that will make that consideration. So what you would ideally want to do is, if you are going to offset, look at stuff that already is in that short-term capital gains category, right? So if you're resetting the clock, like, you're not undoing your long-term capital gains benefit in the event that some of these do get hit in the next year. So that's what I would look at for that. If I were to use that strategy, it would mostly be Ondo that I'd probably be looking to harvest here, as it's a newer position to be able to sell and buy back at a loss, even though it's not a huge loss. But again, some of these positions I've been building for a long time here, so booking that loss could cost me more in the future, because of that capital gains clock. However, offsetting just enough for the gains for this year is probably beneficial. So just things to consider, guys. Of course, not tax advice, and I would encourage you guys to come check out today's episode if you guys are interested in those tax related questions for crypto. We're going to just go with Hoy as first name here. Not going to do that whole thing. Can you please do a quick Zcash and Bitcoin chart update going into 2026? Absolutely. So Let's do Zcash first. We'll start with Zcash. So Zcash has obviously been on a huge tear in here. And again, most of my team has an average well below $40. We really took advantage of this entire area in here, even as we were kind of like poking below the lows and it wasn't a great time in here. A lot of other stuff was doing decent. Zcash finally started to show a little bit of strength here in, January of this year, and then, set that higher low and then eventually went on for that parabolic run. Also in here, you had a lot of crazy news from the EU banning privacy coins. There's a lot of just nonsense that goes on out there. If you guys, listen to all the chatter, you're going to just constantly be in and out of assets. Now, let's talk about where we are with Zcash. We, first of all, came within about 2x of our final target there for Zcash. Now, I mean, we have some moonshot targets, but as far as what I consider to be like pretty much out of the market and whatever you want to keep in the market, 1400 is kind of that final area of interest where I'm like, all right, anything beyond this, the ROI starts to become dismal. Market cap starts to have much more meaningful requirements to make those same moves happen. Remember that we are now working with a much bigger market cap, even 350 compared to a $20 to $30 Zcash. So more and more capital is required to make bigger moves happen. We've had tremendous growth in here. We did a little bit of a rebalancing move here. We've kind of like done like the minimum as far as like retesting these double tops in here, but I still see kind of like this 170 area as an area of interest. I also see a little bit of imbalance down here towards 104, and then of course like the $70 to $80 area. So although Zcash has done well and we've had a good sized correction, there are still imbalances lower underneath where we are currently that should be resolved before we see more impulses to the upside. It's been a really beautiful break of this cup and handle, but there's most likely a little bit more retrace required. If we don't do that retrace, we are essentially looking at 1400 as that next big area of interest. If I take all of this away, we look at the more short-term range in here. You guys can see that 1.618 right around 570 was struck. We look at the long-term range, we break this down, long-term range. So from the 2017 high to these lows in here, you guys can see we came in for a 786 retrace, right? And this is what I always talk about with those retrace levels is if you're going to be a short seller, you're going to start layering in here at the 618 all the way up into the 786, but you're not really going to be taking a lot of risk until you get to these retrace levels because this is the more likely area for us to turn over. I did tell my team in the Discord, we got receipts for it. I told them, several days before, hey, I'm moving another 20% on an exchange because market's crazy right now. I want to take advantage of volatility. And I said, I chopped another 20% of my bag at the 700 mark. So I am 60% out of my Zcash position here, and I feel very, very good about that. I have plenty in the market. You guys can see that 1400 is that next area. And of course, you do get 2200 to 3600. But when we look at multiples, guys, and this is really what it all comes down to in here, right? From like my average price down here in the 20s to the $1,400 market, the 52x, I've already taken upwards of a 25x off the table, and my first TP was taking about a 12x off the table. So very, very happy with this. It's all about multiples to me. When you look at the, let's say even my last TP to the 1.618, it's a 2x, right? We get to $3,600, you get maybe another 4x out of this if things go really, really well. So this is more about reduction for Zcash. I'd love for us to see some really, really great prices. I'd love for us to see a, 3, 4K Zcash, but I think that Zcash has done a good portion of what it's likely to do this coming cycle. When we take a look at Bitcoin though, let's take a look at the Bitcoin forecast. And we've obviously talked about this every day on our Crypto Charge live show. We cover Bitcoin's the first crypto we cover every single day because it gives us a good direction of what's happening in the rest of the market. But we've had great uptrend so far this cycle. I really, really am impressed with the uptrend that's been attacked this cycle. Now, of course, we have broken below this trend line a bit here, but overall, you look at the growth left to right here, there has been a very, very clean and consistent uptrend. When you look at the previous year cycle, which again has really distorted people's view of what a cycle should look like, if you really think about it, this was kind of like that was bottom of the cycle. This was the first impulsive wave, confirming that, the downtrend was not intact anymore, taking out those previous resistance levels, coming back. We technically set a higher low here on that C19 news, and then it was just basically straight up from there, right? Very minimal correction. Once you started this parabola, there's correction there. Then you had like a little bit of that here, but this really ended up being a distributive top, basically come in for just like a double top there. So a lot less corrections along the way. When you do more corrections like this along the way and you kind of do that breakout backtest behavior, you actually set yourself up for potentially longer cycles, right? And I'm not going to be the guy who's like, oh, this time is different, but structurally, this time is different. 100% it is. So we've done a lot of retracing in here. I think that, again, we're ready for short-term bullishness towards at least $103,000 to $110,000, even if, maybe there's other short-term moves that come into play or midterm moves that come into play. That's my expectation here. Anything above, these previous tops in here in the low 70s is still long-term uptrend intact. I would say that we've done a good amount of correcting here on Bitcoin as a whole. We actually are in a spot where we could just see another high poked here. My expectations using the previous, and again, I never do timeline predictions, so we're loosely using the word for 2026 here. But even using the 21 high in here and the 22 low, we did get out to the 1.618 here, which was, again, on the website, TP1, $102,000. But around 150 would be that next big area of interest. And I think that Bitcoin has probably another push in it towards 150. I don't know if it has 200 to 240 in it left in this cycle, but I do think that we could get another push towards 150. Now, even from current market to that, area of interest, about a 70% move. If you got a nice little opportunity to grab the 24 highs in there, that would be roughly 120% move. Definitely not the best ROI, but Bitcoin recovery is required for altcoin recovery as well. So that's what we're rooting for here. We are short-term below some of the MAs, the 50-week and the 100-day. Recovering back above 102, 103 puts us back in play, though, for more bullishness. So again, we give comprehensive analysis on our website every single day. But this is kind of my more macro view for this. If you guys have questions on this, please drop them down in the comments below. Wilfred Jason, are you still accumulating Casper? Do you believe its ROI this bull run will be better than XRP, XLM, HBAR, and Algo? So I think it's a fair question. So first of all, yes, I am still accumulating Casper right now. And it's not, my DCA is always going to be contingent on my personal averages, my personal weighting, in my portfolio as a whole. I'll take other things into consideration, like, staking rewards, especially if other bags that need to be worked on, because those staking rewards do work for me. But right now, Casper is part of a 5-part DCA for me. That DCA, anytime it changes, is updated for you guys in the Discord and the announcements channel. So you guys can check that. There's other things in there as well right now, including Algo, Sushi, Ondo. There's a few others in there that are being worked on as a just 5-part DCA right now. So as far as ROI, and these are all very different projects. Let's remember that's an important distinction. Casper is hyper focused on upgradable smart contracts. XRP and XLM a little bit more focused on remittance. I would say Algo kind of falls in that category as well. And HBAR's throughput with their hashgraph model is definitely superior as far as like microtransactions. So there's a lot of different value across the board. There's also a lot of different market capitalizations across the board, right? Let's just take a quick look at those. If we were to take a look at the HBAR, we get 6.2 billion, so relatively small. We get XLM. We get 8.3 billion. We get XRP, obviously huge, 136 billion. And then we have Algo, which is sitting around 1.2 billion. So low billions on a lot of these. Obviously, Casper is, I think, 40 or 50 million right now. 80 million right now. So, obviously way smaller. Now that's one huge consideration that I look at because, when you look at the amount of capital required, smaller market caps do move, more quickly because you don't need as much capital to get there. There is definitely a hierarchy to ROI with Casper right now, obviously at those multi-year lows, which is not fun to look at. And I still cover this every day on the show. It's just, difficult when you don't have a lot of trend that's being provided. You've, kind of just been toying with these lows. We set a new low here today. But I have seen Casper react, when it does get oversold, some really violent reactions in here. When we look at, let's say, even from a lot of people have averages in the 2 and 3 cents, right? So let's pretend pretend that that's everyone's at current market. So let's go from, let's say, like 2.8. If we look at that from even to this double top here, right around the 24-cent mark, which is still a very small market cap, that's over an 8x. And that's from, again, like almost a 3-cent average on there. From current market to that double top in there is roughly a 40x opportunity. From current market to the even 2.6 cent level is like 330% from current market. And we can use a variety of different fibs here. But overall, I think that Casper, just raw ROI wise, has the absolute best upside as far as potential. Now, of course, you do have to reclaim some key levels in here in order for us to see that uptrend actually ensue. And then XLM would probably be the next biggest ROI. Algo would be next biggest, then XLM, then HBAR, then XRP. Those are probably going to be the order of ROIs there. But remember that I have all of these except for XLM in my portfolio right now. And that's a very important concept that you guys need to look at here. Too many people try to do either the switching around, I sold this bag for that bag, and they only have one bag at a time, or they feel like they need to be hyper concentrated and find just the right picks that are going to give just the absolute ROI. Zcash had the greatest ROI at one point, or one of the better ones out there, and now that ROI is dismal. But if I hadn't done a little bit of a spread, right, I would have missed out on that opportunity. So don't get hyper concentrated here. We have a lot of resources on our website to help you guys with that stuff. Consistent Investor Strategy is available there. It's about a 50-minute video giving you guys the breakdown of how to build a portfolio properly, how to manage it, how to deploy capital, set profit or set take profits, determine long-term holds. We give you guys a lot of resources there. And even as you guys watch our content every day, you're able to read it. You guys have access to the Discord with code YouTube, and you guys can ask questions and make sure you get clarifying questions. And I do offer one-on-one sessions at extra cost as well if you guys want to dig a little bit deeper than that. But I encourage you guys to extract as much value from our platform first. It's a great place to start. Otherwise, guys, we'll be back again on Monday with After Hours and, of course, Crypto Charge live later today. See you guys next week.